What's up, Falcons fans, and welcome to episode 19 of Talkin Birdy, an Atlanta Falcons podcast powered by SportsTalkATL.com. I am your host, Matt Karoly. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Karoly. Karoly spelled Karoly, and it's officially game week here. Speculation season, as I like to call it, is officially over. Now, no more time for talking. It's going to get settled on the field. We're going to find out what we've been talking about these last several months is real or not. And to break it all down, I got my two usual co-hosts from the Sports Talk ATL team, Jake Gordon. You can find him on Twitter at Can'tGuardJake. And Alex Lord, you can find him on Twitter at Go Sports Talk. Go spelled Geaux. Tough week for you, Alex, with LSU. We won't harp on it too much. Hopefully, some good things to talk about here with the Falcons as they prepare for week one. But I'll let you say your piece if you want. How you're feeling? LSU country.
We should be kicked out of the SEC. Tear Tiger Stadium down, turn it into dorms or something. Something productive.
All right, so if that's a glimpse, it's overreaction season now.
It is overreaction season.
And, it's important to keep in mind, too, with week one on the horizon, shenanigans often happen. So win or lose, keep that in the back of your head. Again, we won't really know much about the teams in the NFL until later in the season. But before we get into week one and the Philadelphia Eagles matchup, which I think is a very intriguing, underrated matchup, there were some roster moves. I think one of the things now with the regular season upon us and, us recording on Tuesdays like we normally do, although we might be making a jump to Wednesday nights moving forward, but we'll let you know more about that later. Tuesday, 4 p.m., usually that's the roster move day. That officially marks the start of a week, and guys that are on NFL rosters by 4 p.m. Tuesday, they are entitled to their week's salary. So we had a roster move today, but there was a much bigger roster move earlier that I want to start with. The Falcons did make a waiver claim. We talked about last week's show. If you didn't catch it, make sure you watch it. We were breaking down the 53-man roster. And we talked about how fluid the roster is, and the 53-man roster was only temporary, and that held true as the Falcons made two roster moves. The first one was a waiver claim for Colby Gossett, the guard from Cleveland, kind of stuck behind two of the better guards in football, and Joe Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. And so the Browns cut him loose and the Falcons picked him up. And there is a bit of a connection. Dwayne Ledford, the offensive line coach, the App State connection. I think we harped on it with Ryan Nazil. I know I did on Twitter and here on the podcast. Gossett's also from App State. He was there with Ledyard in Ledyard's final year in 2015. So he's going to come over and add to the left guard mix, which I guess we should also mention that Josh Andrews, who we were very worried to potentially see start, he is on the short-term IR now with a broken hand that he had surgery on. So that thrusts Jalen Mayfield into the starting spot. So let's kind of start the conversation there. And I kind of want to pose a question before we dive into it. With Mayfield getting the start at left guard and Gossett now being brought in, I don't know, to be competition, do you think they could pull the plug on Mayfield? Him being the third round rookie draft pick in the inaugural draft class, I feel like they got to ride with him unless you find yourself in another situation where, he goes down and then that opens the door for Gossett. What are your thoughts moving forward? Are we kind of quote unquote stuck with Mayfield and we're going to let this ride out? Or do you think, this could be a rotation at times during the season? Alex, I'll let you go first on that. What are your thoughts?
I definitely think Gossett's just a depth piece. I don't think he's here to really challenge for a starting spot. With that being said, I think they'll probably ride with Mayfield until at least week 4 and then maybe reassess at that point. But going forward, I think Mayfield's a guy, even if he's, shown no – I don't know. I don't know the kind of coach Arthur Smith is, but
that's a fair point too.
You'd think he would just, be like, all right, these are 3 weeks. that you're just going to get thrown around and, embarrassed. I mean, and
baptized.
it also has to be said who he's playing against. Like, he's playing against incredible defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen. So that is a massive factor. He's gonna not look well. He's not gonna look good. And if he does, it's just all gravy. So I think I think they'll just ride with him. I mean, I'm nervous about it. I thought he would start from the beginning of the offseason, but not like this, not like forced into it. So
yeah, certainly not. No, and I think you make a good point. Again, this is all new for all of us. We don't know the type of coach Arthur Smith is and how short the leash would be. I mean, I'm of the standpoint, again, looking at something like Frank Darby sticking around, which we weren't sure he would make the 53-man roster, and the fact that he did, mainly because of draft pedigree, makes me think that with Mayfield, he's going to be the guy all season unless he gets hurt. Jake, do you have anything else to add? Do you disagree, or what are your overall takes on Gossett versus Mayfield and how long Mayfield will have this job for?
Yeah, if they make a change, it won't be in week one. They'll just let him suffer, I guess, if he does. But I don't see them making a change in week one unless he gets hurt.
Yeah. So we're all kind of thinking Gossett's not anything more than what Josh Andrews was, from the standpoint that
I think he's probably worse. I mean, the Browns have a couple of backup interior linemen. I don't know. I remember reading somewhere that they kept like 10 linemen because they had a bevy of backups that could possibly one day. So though he might be, he could be something, I don't know if he's better than Andrews at this point in his career. Not saying that he couldn't develop into that, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I think too, Andrews comes aboard, in free agency, whereas Gossett's coming aboard a week before the season. There's going to be an acclimation period. But I'll be honest, I look at Gossett more highly than I do Andrews, because with Gossett, again, I think there's still more upside, whereas Andrews, I think the sample size and he's been in the league longer, whereas Gossett, former 5th-round pick in 2018, Arizona, that was coincidentally enough, the 1 year Josh Rosen was there, and now he's going to, reunite with him in Atlanta. He saw his only time on the field then, and since that point, he's been a backup, and like I mentioned, kind of in a situation where it's going to be hard to find the field. And now in Atlanta, there's an opportunity. But again, I agree. I don't think the leash is going to be short with Mayfield. I think they're going to let him truly. It's going to be trial by fire with this, first 4 to 5 games of this stiff competition, and he's going to sink or swim. But being that he's a high draft pick, again, unless there's an injury, I think he's going to be the left guard all season. So
I would be
we'll see what happens.
I would be shocked if they pulled him and at least put Gossett in. Maybe if they,
and you're talking week one strictly, right?
Yeah. So until Andrews can return from IR, I would be shocked if he was benched. But I don't think he'll play the whole season. So at that point, we could reassess it. And then you could possibly see what they were going to – if he impresses, then they're just going to keep him, obviously.
Well, absolutely.
We're all, talking if he looks horrible. But, maybe there's a chance – I don't know. It's a slim chance.
Well, I think we all agree that it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
I think we'd all be shocked if he just locks down that job and looks like a very good guard right off the bat. So, again, certainly, as we've talked about, left guard's going to be one we have all of our eyes on starting week one. Couple other things to get to. I'll address the other roster addition. Wayne Gallman, running back, formerly of the Giants for the last 4 years, was available. He had spent the offseason in San Francisco, but they had, a bevy of options with Trey Sermon, Raheem Mostert, etc. He couldn't make the team. He was available. Falcons pounced on an opportunity and in a corresponding roster move, cut Quadri Allison, the 5th-round pick from 2019, which, again, a little bit surprising. I think we all had thought Allison was safe, but, based on the fact that he was playing well into the final preseason game and even the preseason game before, I guess, it wasn't as much of a certainty, but what are your guys' thoughts on Gallman? For me personally, and again, you got to take it with a grain of salt sometimes, but looking at the Pro Football Focus grades, all three of the running backs graded above 70, which is a competent starter. And there was another stat that was thrown out there in terms of Gallman. Only 3 other running backs fared better than him yards after contact last season, 2 of which are Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb, 2 of the best running backs in football. So, that's the type of stat that really shows whether a running back is worth anything or not, whether they can get yards that they have to earn on their own. The other one is that elusive rating, making guys miss. And that, coincidentally enough, is one that Mike Davis, performed very well in. So, you got to give Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith some credit for retooling completely this running back room and picking up 3 competent guys. Now, again, that was last season. Hopefully they can carry that good play forward. But I certainly like this signing a lot. Jake, are you a fan of it, or what are your thoughts? Do you care at all about? What do you think Gallman's going to play? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was pretty so on it until I saw the yards after contact stat, and then I thought it was pretty good. And obviously, we'll get to it, but the fact that they got back on practice was even better. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah, it's a good point. Austin did return to the practice squad, so as Arthur Smith noted in his press conference, the road's not over for him. But now he can learn and learn how to run better again. Which one of the weirder stories I think out of Flowery Branch is hearing that Austin had to learn how to run. But Alex, thoughts on the Gallman signing?
Yeah, I think it was kind of weird how Arthur Smith, or whoever said it, Terry Fontenot, was like, "Yeah, he's here for special teams. He's just here."
Yeah,
and the depth chart, signifies that. I'm sure he will play a portion of it, though. I don't think he's really ever played special teams. He's
I
always
tweeted out
been
the
a
snaps.
running back too.
Right, the last 2 years he barely played any special team snaps.
Yeah,
2
he's
years
a
prior,
running back too.
Yeah,
but I also think Cordero Patterson's still going to be. I don't know. I think they just rebuilt a pretty good running back room, so I think they have depth there. I think that they're comfortable there, especially with Quadri on the practice squad. I can't believe that they knew that he was going to fall through the waivers. They had to have had a good idea, to bring him back.
Well, he hasn't shown much in the NFL, so it's like, what could teams really see to want to take a chance on him? And because if you're going to claim him, they have to be on the 53-man roster. You can't claim him to put him on the practice squad. The only way that can happen is if Quadri said, "I didn't want to be on the practice squad at Falcons. I'd rather be on this practice squad," and then it's his choice. But I think one thing to clarify, because I get some questions from people on Twitter, is the RB2 thing. I think we'll all interchangeably call Patterson and Gallman RB2 at times, but I think there's delineations in that with Patterson being an RB2, that's more like the third down, change of pace type of role, whereas Gallman being an RB2 is if something were to happen to Davis and you need the guy to shoulder the load, it's not going to be Patterson. It's going to be Gallman being the lead back.
A couple of good examples are like the 49ers. The 49ers use 2-3 running backs throughout the season. The Packers, they use 2-3 running backs throughout the season. And then you obviously – it correlates over to what the Falcons are doing because they don't have somebody like Derrick Henry who you can give, 90% of the touches out of the backfield to. So, it's clear what they're doing. And I don't think Gallman is just here to, take up space. I think he's here to play. So, I think he'll be an RB2/3.
For the fantasy listeners out there, I certainly think he dips into Davis's stock a little bit more than Allison does, because Gallman's a player. He's proven. We saw what he did last year when Saquon Barkley went down in New York. He can handle the load. He's almost like a Gus Edwards. If you look at Gallman's numbers versus Gus Edwards' numbers in the roles that they had, both of them were around the 600 to 700 yard mark. So, and I'm a huge Gus Edwards fan, and now we see Gus Edwards is going to be the RB1 in Baltimore. For the money, what they did in this running back room, I think some of Terry Fontenot's best work this offseason, if not his best work. But So that's that. One other housekeeping note, kind of caught us all off guard when we saw that Josh Harris, the long snapper, was cut. Turns out it's just a procedural move, and a procedural move that shows just how bad the Falcons' salary cap position is, because they cut him, essentially signed him to the same cash value deal, but his cap hit is $215,000 less, which is enough to sign an additional practice squad player. And we knew that they were only at 15 practice squad guys originally, so that's basically the thought process behind it. And again, just shows where they're at from a salary cap standpoint. I calculated they're around 300, 400,000 after you take everything into account right now, which, yeah, not great. And
I think this signifies, or Grady will not get an extension. Nobody's going to get an extension until after this season. Nobody.
Yeah, not an extension, but
or at least a restructure. I don't think they could have done it so long.
I know.
It would have to be a catastrophe. Yeah. They would have to be like, we have no other option.
And again, can you go into the season at $400K? I don't think so, because especially we've seen there's already been a handful of injuries that they've had in the off season. And, you see other teams around the league when you see, they restructured Julio Jones' deal to create cap space. They're doing that for the emergency fund purposes. Teams, I think the Cowboys just did it with Dak Prescott. This is the time of the year where teams do that again. And I don't know what other choice the Falcons
are
have.
Different. I think those are different. Like the Falcons aren't on the cusp of
winning
a Super Bowl.
But they're not even. Those teams aren't even doing it to go all in. They're just doing it because they need a breathing room.
The Titans are certainly closer to a Super Bowl in terms of why they would push
I'm not arguing
down Julio
I'm not arguing
down
that.
the road. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
but what are they using the cap space for right now? Teams aren't using the cap space.
You just said for an emergency fund. I'm just telling you.
Well, yeah, for emergency fund, but Falcons need an emergency. Every team needs an emergency fund. No matter what position you're in.
I don't know.
Because if a guy goes down, how it works is if a guy goes down, his salary cap hit is guaranteed. It's on the books. So you need to replace that with a new hit, and you need to have the space to do that. You need to have the money to afford that. So yes, they waited all this time, and
it's mandatory, but it's not certainly necessary to the extent of the Titans, who if somebody went down, they would be we need somebody adequate to replace them, whereas the Falcons are not in that position. That's my whole point. That if
I don't even think it comes down to adequate players.
What do you mean? If a starter went down on the Titans offensive line and they wanted to sign somebody off the street, we would not do that. We would not do that if the same scenario happened.
Wait, so you're saying we had an injury?
If Jake Matthews went down and their left tackle Taylor Lewin went down, they would.
What starting caliber left tackles are you finding off the street to even Taylor? You're not replacing Taylor Lewin off the street with anybody.
Semantics, but you get what I'm saying. They have more to lose by not replacing a better player. Way more to lose. I don't think the Falcons are rushing around to make this team as great as possible or do anything too rash. Maybe they restructure somebody minimally, but they're not running around trying to create all kinds of cap space.
Yeah.
So yes, they will, to your emergency fund point, but it's not going to be anything ridiculous to do anything important.
Well, again, looking at the contracts, there's not many other options. It's a top-heavy group. They've already restructured Matt Ryan's. They've already restructured Jake Matthews. They've already touched Deion Jones. You're not left with many other guys beyond Grady Jarrett. And again, I know the timing would make no sense, and I'll be one of the first to go to Twitter saying, why didn't you do this months ago? It would have equated to the same thing.
Well, they can do portions.
I don't know what other options they have.
You can do portions of a restructure, can't you?
Yeah. So I guess to your point, they don't have to do the max one.
Yeah.
They'll do maybe 5 million of the 10.
Just enough to get them where
that's
they are.
Fair. That's fair. Just to get you enough breathing room where if something goes wrong, you can find the next man, and his $600,000, $700,000 salary will eat into that 5 million then. So yeah, that's a fair point there. They'll take a conservative approach, but I do think they're going to do something with Grady Jarrett. So we'll see. Maybe Isaiah Oliver, but again, I think his roster spot's locked in, and you're only going to get $2 million from him. So what's the point? But let's move on. I'm going to run through the practice squad guys, and then going to ask you if there's any surprises before we move on to some other matters. So the practice squad as it stands right now: running backs Caleb Huntley, Quadri Olson, receivers Keelan Doss, who they picked up from the Raiders, one of the veterans, Jawan Green, Austin Trammell, tight end John Rain and David Wells, tackle Willie Beavers, guard Ryan Nazeal, nose tackle Chris Slayton, outside linebackers Quentin Bell, George Abina, James Vaughters, inside linebacker Emmanuel Ellerby, cornerback Chris Williamson, safety Dwayne Johnson Jr. Jake, I'll turn it over to you. Any surprises there? Any notable standout names?
I thought they would try to keep Joe Sculthorpe, and I thought they'd keep Errol Thompson over Emmanuel Ellerby. Maybe even Parker Hess. Yeah, maybe even Parker Hess. I'm glad they kept Chris Williamson.
Yeah, Parker Hess, I guess, could return to the practice squad. Right now he's on COVID list for the time being. But yeah, for me, Errol Thompson, a guy that was, starting alongside Michael Walker in a lot of these preseason games. The fact that Ellerby made it over him was a head scratcher. Other than that, maybe Austin Trammell or George Abina both being cuts very early in the process, making it over, like Austin Trammell making it over the likes of Chris Rowland, who was really battling for that punt returner, kick returner job. I thought that was kind of shocking. But other than that, they kept a lot of the guys that they knew and liked. So, Alex, any thoughts on the practice squad?
Not really. My focus is all shifted to like the starters at this point. I think the practice squad's just going to vary all season long. Who they bring up, whatever, 2 or 3 or 4 guys. I don't know how many they bring on the game day roster, but I'm sure it'll vary just week to week, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, they're allowed the 2 call-ups, and they're allowed up to 4 protections. As far as the protections goes, like a guy like Willie Beavers, the fact that they only have one other tackle on the roster in Jason Spriggs backing up Matthews and McGarry, I feel like Beavers is going to be a popular call-up candidate. Chris Williamson, especially given the injury to Kendall Sheffield, in the first couple weeks here, if he can't go, I feel like Williamson, a guy who was, the starting cornerback in these early preseason games, I feel like he's one to watch as far as a call-up. But, yeah, it's always interesting, with these new rules with the protections. That's who they value the most. And, for me, the guy that I feel like has the most upside, maybe other than like a Caleb Huntley, I really like Ryan Nazeal. In fact, I like that he's stuck. I like the fact that, it helped his cause that they cut Sam Jones today to make room for Quadri Olson. So, again, it's going to be tough for Nazeal to see the field. The fact you got Lindstrom and now Mayfield at guard, but maybe a developmental guy as a backup moving forward. All right. Want to talk week 1 now? First game of the season. It's interesting that, again, the Eagles, this will be the 4th time in the last 7 seasons that they're playing either their first or second game against Philadelphia. And, the Dan Quinn era got kicked off in a week 1 matchup on Monday Night Football in 2015 against the Eagles. And now the Arthur Smith era is going to do the same. So we'll see if lightning can strike twice. But, for me, I think one of the underrated storylines is this matchup between Smith and defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon. Both coaches, cut their teeth with the Titans as quality control coaches in 2012. And I know, Smith downplayed it in the presser yesterday that, it might not matter much, or it's been a while since they've coached, but they're both good friends. And again, I think if anyone knows the other one better, both being, first time, Smith isn't a first time play caller, but he's a first time head coach calling the shots entirely. I feel like it would be a guy like Gannon and vice versa. I feel like Gannon being a first-time defensive coordinator, Arthur Smith's going to have somewhat of an idea of maybe what to expect. But turn it over to you, Jake. What's the number one thing you're looking for in this matchup? How do you feel like this game could be decided?
Well, I thought the Falcons were honestly going to hire Gannon as their defensive coordinator before they got Dean Pease. But speaking of him, I think it's going to come down to Dean Pease' experience against Jalen Hurts, a young quarterback on the road. As I've said before, there's not many people in that building that are still interested in Jalen Hurts' development. I don't know if Nick Sirianni is. He was kind of not very non-committal at the beginning of the season, all the Deshaun Watson rumors and stuff like that. And so I guess we'll see how long for Philly Jalen Hurts is, because if you want my personal opinion, I don't think it's going to be very long, and I don't think it's his fault. I think Jalen Hurts is a good player. I think he's a great kid. But if Dean Pease can create a lot of pressure, he hasn't even thrown 150 NFL passes. If Dean Pease can scheme up some pressure, give him some confusing looks on the road, I think the Falcons have a really good chance to win.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, certainly.
The Dean Pease thing is got to be the most important thing. But the Dean Pease for sure is our easiest way to winning, and how they stop us is basically Gannon against Kyle Pitts. Like, I think they'll do everything in their power to stop us, double coverage and Kyle Pitts, and just letting Slay probably take Calvin Ridley. I don't know if they follow. Would they follow? Would Darius Slay follow Calvin
I don't
Ridley?
think so. And they did sign Steven Nelson, which was a low-key underrated signing a couple weeks ago. Yeah, quality cornerback for several years with both Kansas City and Pittsburgh. So, the Eagles do match up better on the outside than they did prior to that signing. And they added Anthony Harris in their secondary, very good player from Minnesota. So really, again, as you pointed out, Alex, I mean, that Kyle Pitts matchup is going to be a true X factor. And I think you're going to, Arthur Smith's going to do whatever he can to, I think, take advantage of the Eagles' one Achilles heel. Because, I feel like they're strong up front. They've always been strong up front. And they've improved on the back end with their signings. They're linebackers, though. I think that's been an Achilles heel for several years now. You got guys like Alex Singleton, who you're probably like, who? He was a CFL All-Star, but, last year was his first year as a starter. And, if you look at the box score, he racked up a lot of tackles, but that doesn't necessarily tell you the full story about him. And, they did bring over Eric Wilson, another Minnesota Viking, who's a competent player, but certainly, not among the best linebackers in football. And then, you'll see them. I think they're going to be very similar, I think, in a way. And I think that's why, to Jake's point, Arthur Smith wanted to hire Jonathan Gannon before, he could lure Dean Pease in, is because Gannon's going to be a very multiple defense, and they're going to use three linebacker at times. Maybe they're going to use a 3-4 look, some hybrid stuff. And when they do have three linebackers on the field, Jannard Avery will be that third guy as a Sam. And I think those are the snaps to focus in on, because when he's on the field, I think they're going to try to manipulate and exploit that matchup. If they can somehow get Avery and Pitts one-on-one, that's a huge win for the Falcons. Now, again, I don't think
this is going to be impressive of Arthur Smith. He's just going to – I think the easiest way to get Kyle Pitts around all these guys, because I think instead if they get stuck with that guy on Kyle Pitts, I mean, shame on the Eagles defense. I mean, that's unacceptable. And I think they'll probably combo coverage him, throw multiple looks at him, bracket coverage, just a couple zone looks. And this will be a test for Kyle Pitts, one, being able to settle in zones and see a defense, but also Arthur Smith for like moving him around, getting him in motion, getting him easy passes. And I think that'll be a different thing that the Falcons fans aren't really used to. They didn't see that a lot with Dirk Cutter, where it's like, oh, that was the easiest pass ever for 9 yards. Where was that? I think that's something that we will see. I think Arthur Smith should get the better of him, but I think Jalen Hurts, if we aren't like in our pass rush lanes. Jalen Hurts is just going to torch us on his feet. I mean, we have athletic linebackers, but he's a competent runner, like very impressive runner. So I think that's important and an underrated thing of like stay in your rush lanes. Like other than that,
I'm glad you brought that up. It'll be interesting. Do they spy at all? How much zone versus man do they play? Because you got eyes on the quarterback when you're playing zone versus man. That could be an underrated element where Hurts. Pun intended, can hurt the Falcons because as a passer, again, there's some to be desired. And again, him making only his 5th career start, I believe it is, against a savvy defensive coordinator that's seen it all and done it all and even confused some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You would think the Falcons have the advantage, but if, to your point, Alex, they're not doing something as simple as staying in your rush lanes, being disciplined, there's opportunity for the Eagles to exploit them in that regard. But yeah, I mean, going back to the Kyle Pitts matchup, and again, I think they're going to try to bracket as much as possible. Gannon comes from the cover 2 influence with Mike Zimmer and Matt Eberflus, so I'd be shocked, how much we truly do see one-on-one coverages or opportunities where there's not multiple safeties over the top, because especially with Rodney McLeod, who I think his absence will be felt as well. He's a couple weeks away from an injury. They're going to start the second-year player Kayvon Wallace alongside Anthony Harris. Marcus Epps is a third safety. I don't know how much we'll see him, but yeah, again, when the opportunities present themselves, and that's why I think it's a great matchup, there's going to be a lot of cat and mouse. I think Arthur Smith's going to do everything in his power to exploit them. But I think for the most part, Pitts is going to have to learn how to sit down in coverages and be able to read what's going on around him. So this could be a great first test for him. But yeah, I truly think he's the X factor, because the Slay versus Ridley matchup, I mean, if we get the Slay from last year where he looked a little beat, definitely didn't have his best season, then certainly the scales tilt in the Falcons' favor. But if we get the Slay of old, that potentially could be a wash. And then Gage and Steven Nelson could potentially also be a wash. So that's why I really think the tight ends, specifically Kyle Pitts, present the biggest X factor in this game. I think the other thing to talk about too, and maybe let's talk a little bit about the trenches. And I feel like I've been saying this again. I mentioned how this is the 4th meeting in the last 7 years that the Falcons have had with the Eagles. And I feel like every single one I've talked about the trenches. This game comes down to the trenches. Eagles have always been, on paper, the better team in that area than the Falcons. But there's been times where the Falcons did just enough to prevail. Starting first with the Eagles' offensive line, they were probably as injury-riddled of a unit as there was last season, with Brandon Brooks being out for the entirety of the season, one of the better guards in football. Lane Johnson was banged up quite a bit. If Brooks and Johnson can return to form, again, you give any quarterback a lot of time, it's never a good thing. So that's my one concern there. Talk to me about the trenches. What do you guys see there with this matchup? What concerns you? Do you think there's any potential opportunities for the Falcons to win? Jake, I'll turn it over to you first.
Yeah, I mean, like we saw when the Falcons had the game-winning touchdown with Julio 2 years ago. I think screens can help a lot in that aspect. I mean, we even saw in the Browns game, Kyle Pitts run that little I don't really want to call it a leak, but that little motion to the flat.
Yeah.
And that was one-on-one coverage, and then he ends up getting 30 yards on that play. It's not necessarily a screen, but I think they're going to try to neutralize Philly's front four, because outside of that, their defense is not very good. So I think if you can stay away from Fletcher Cox, stay away from Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett, and those guys, I think he just gives you a much better chance to win.
Agreed, Alex.
Yeah, I'll talk about both sides because, like, this is interesting because Jason Kelsey, Brooks, and Johnson are a formidable side and can easily run the ball behind that all day long if, what you said is true and they return to their form. So that is something to consider. But, yeah, I think the bigger question mark is the Falcons. I mean, they have 6 guys that can all rush the passer. I mean, impressively, six different guys. And I mean, we already talked about Jalen Mayfield starting. I mean, this is, feet to the fire. And I don't remember the exact quote, but Arthur Smith said that quote about, somebody's got to be baptized. You always got to be baptized at some point. He is true, but Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and not that he'll be facing him, but Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan are all capable of applying pressure to the quarterback in one-on-one matchups. So it'll be interesting to see how the Falcons' offensive line as a whole works. Obviously, we'll be paying attention to Jalen Mayfield, like specifically, but it is more than just one matchup. It's like Arthur Smith, exactly what Jake said, neutralizing the defensive front through scheme and play calling and not being predictable and all of these things. Jalen Mayfield, but later in the game, Jalen Mayfield's going to have to hold up in pass protection on a third down, and it could be the game, it could not be the game, but there will come a time where he has to hold up, and that'll be a big test.
Yeah, and you both talked about scheming to neutralize the pressure, and I think early down success on offense is going to be critical. If they're in third and longs all day, advantage Eagles. But if hopefully the ground game gets going, I mean, that's been talked about a lot. Arthur Blank, even in a Q&A with Mike Rothstein on ESPN, talked about it's one of the reasons they brought Arthur Smith on board as the next head coach was what he has done in the run game. And they need to establish it. They need to get ahead of the chains early. That'll allow the play action to be a thing all throughout the game. And, play action neutralizes a pass rush as good as anything that you can run in football. So that's important. Again, incorporating some quick games, some screens early on to move the chains or get ahead of the chains. Because like I said, if they can't and Eagles are stuffing them on first and second down, bringing up third and longs, that's when, again, Jalen Mayfield is going to have to block a guy mano-a-mano. And again, Fletcher Cox advantage there, Javon Hargrave advantage there. You'll see Brandon Graham slide in. He rushes from the interior, advantage there. So the Eagles have a lot of bodies, as you mentioned, talked about 6 or so that they can throw out there to keep fresh. So again, early down success rates, I think, extremely critical. Probably the most critical thing I think the offense can potentially do. And again, it all starts up front. It all starts with the run game, I think. But also, if the run game's not going, you'll probably see Arthur Smith go to an extension of a run game, and that's where the screens and the quick games hopefully come into play, and hopefully they're successful. So I think we've covered it from all angles. I know you guys like predictions.
I'll say one more thing about a specific matchup is Caleb McGarry. He'll definitely be another one we have to watch and see if he's taking that next step forward. So that should be interesting because these are pretty good tests in terms of pass rushers. So that'll be good.
Absolutely. Yeah, both those guys, I think it's critical. I mean, even Matt Hennessy.
I don't know.
We don't know what to expect. I mean, I have a level of confidence that's weird because, again, I guess I'm still reeling off the draft film and the draft takes from him. And I knew that this was going to be the process, year one, learning under Alex Mack, hopefully getting some snaps and check. We've crossed that milestone and now we're here and Mack's no longer there. And, year 2, the expectation was he's going to be the starting center, and he is. And I'm hoping he does a pretty good job of it. And again, as you said, he's going to, he ran, through the Lions' den at the end of the season with the Chiefs and the Bucks, and now that's going to continue for the first 5 weeks because, Alex, you're the first one that noted it. It's a murderer's row of defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, some of the best in the game. So, those three are going to be critical. If those three can do their job, the Falcons' offensive line is going to look pretty good for the foreseeable future. If there's some bumps in it, I mean, hopefully it's just the minor developmental bumps. But if it's some legitimate bumps, then we have more stuff to talk about and add to our worries. But let's throw some predictions out there. I'll let you guys do the honors, and I'll just kind of piggyback off of it. Jake, what do you got?
I wrote mine down earlier and I kind of forgot, but I think I said 28-20 Falcons.
Yeah, let me go find I wrote it in a gambling article. I think I had the over hitting and the in Philly.
I guess speaking of that, what is the line right now and what is the over under?
The over under is like 48 and the line's like 3.5, which is
3.5 Falcons.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a little surprising, honestly, but
so I agree.
You think it should just be a pick 'em? I mean, the power rankings that you see, and they mean nothing, but the power rankings that have been out there, Eagles and Falcons have been pretty close by in the low 20s I've seen. So, yeah, you would think something like this is a pick 'em game. And, again, I'm surprised, but I guess because they're considered some of the worst teams in football right now.
Maybe like 1.5 Atlanta because they're at home. That's probably where I'd set it.
Mm-hmm. I have 30. I had 34-31 in a shootout.
I don't think it's going to get that high scoring.
I think Jalen Hurts is going to have like 150 yards throwing and 150 yards on the ground.
I disagree with that. But
whoa,
we'll see.
Okay, maybe that's a little ridiculous. 200 yards through the air, 300 total purpose yards.
I can job at that.
Maybe not 150, but 200 through the air and 100 on the ground or something. And it's going to be like 160-yard scramble. And then, just 6 yards here, 6 yards there.
I don't know. We're going to see how much they really like Jalen Hurts because I just don't think it's that much, which is stupid, but I don't think it's that much.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly position themselves to break up with Jalen Hurts as soon as next year, with all the draft capital that they've built up through the various trades this offseason. There's been all those Deshaun Watson rumors. I don't think they're hitching their wagon to him. I think he's made of the right stuff, and that's, what you need first and foremost as a quarterback. You also need, play calling around you, personnel around you. They've certainly tried to help. I think we haven't talked about Devonta Smith. What are our thoughts on Devonta Smith? Did the Eagles finally hit on a receiver after 2 swings and misses with J-Jaw and what appears to be Jalen Reagor trending towards bust territory? What do you think Devonta is going to be a huge factor? Is he going to be the leading receiver for the Eagles, or is it going to be one of the tight ends? What do we think about that?
I think it'll be Ertz or Goddard. I don't know. I like Devonta Smith. I don't like him in Philly. That's a weird fit to me. I think he might have been better off in Miami, but Miami was very smart for taking Jalen Waddle, in my opinion. But he's not I don't know. I feel like Devonta Smith would be better on a team with like 1 or 2 other good receivers, and Philly has 0. So I don't know. I don't know if he's a guy that can do it all by himself. Which it's not a diss to him. He's just a rookie. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think I'm with Jake. I can't wait to pull up the receipts I have from before the draft about Waddle being better than Smitty. I mean, if Waddle doesn't get injured again, I mean, that was a freak accident. But still, I think he could be a factor maybe, but kind of like.
Are you concerned about his size? What's the concerns with him?
I don't think that matters. And it depends if he can get off the line of scrimmage. And then if he can't, it's up to his offensive coordinator to basically free him up in bunch sets or in motion and different things like that. We haven't seen anything that shows us he can't beat a press coverage, but obviously Jalen Ramsey's different than, whatever team they were playing,
Yeah.
whoever Ohio State had in the Natty.
Right. I mean, we have hindsight for us with Calvin Ridley, but I don't see any differences why Devonta Smith can't be what Calvin Ridley has become. I mean, virtually
I think it has more to do with
similar type players.
Jalen Hurts at quarterback.
Well, no, and that if that's the reason behind it, I would not argue at all with that. Again, situation matters for all draft picks, and again, the situation right now is dicey in Philadelphia. So if that's your reasoning, then yeah, I'm good with that. But other than that, I mean, I just think what we saw in college from Devonta, kind of what we saw from Calvin Ridley in college, and then Calvin Ridley has translated that as far as being one of the best route runners in football, and I think that's what Devonta brings to the game, is just getting open and being precise in his routes.
Still, when you
I'm curious.
have other players around you to draw that attention, it's easier to develop.
Yeah.
And I feel like if he's going to be the main focus, it's hard to just be a pure route runner and then just be like the best at being a pure route runner and being a number one receiver. Like, I feel like you need somebody around you that's bigger bodied or somebody that's just incredibly fast. I just don't like the fit. I like Devonta Smith. I think he's an incredible player. I just don't love him. And I just don't love that fit.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see. Maybe Jalen Reagor figures it out, and he can maybe potentially take some pressure off. But yeah, there's pressure on both of those guys. Unlike Calvin Ridley, he came into a perfect situation with Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu already on the roster. He just had to beat the third best guy essentially on a defense, and that was very easy for him. And then he can refine his game to the point where it is now. So it'll be certainly interesting. AJ Terrell, those matchups will likely be very fun to watch. Terrell versus Devonta. We're all excited to see Terrell hopefully make that leap and break out. But yeah, I mean, for me, predictions, I don't like giving them, but I do think Falcons will win this one. When I like to make predictions, I like to look at not the odds that Vegas sets, but just the odds of Falcons haven't won a week 1 game since I believe 2017. Yeah, 2018 they lost to the Eagles in week 1. 2019 they lost to the Vikings week 1, and then last year they lost to Seahawks. So it's been 3 years. I feel like they're due for a week 1 win, kick off the Arthur Smith era in style. So that's usually when I'm making predictions, I come up with stuff like that.
You talk yourself into it.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
That's the fan coming out. But no, I just think the Falcons should beat a team like the Eagles because, again, they have more established parts in place.
I said this. I said they have the best offensive player and the best defensive player. Matt Ryan is better than any of the Eagles' offensive linemen in terms of positional
and even
value.
Calvin Ridley too. They have a couple of the best probably offensive players. But yeah,
and then Grady Jarrett's better than Fletcher Cox, who's they're arguably their best.
Yeah. Grady surpassed him.
That could be closer, but yeah, Fletcher Cox is old.
Yeah.
Not old, but older. Yeah.
And again, I guess, let me put an asterisk on it. As we talked about when we're looking at the season as a whole, the thing that can derail the Falcons is this offensive line. So if it's like what I said, as far as they're getting behind the sticks all day, Eagles are able to pin their ears back. Again, that's where the Eagles will win this ball game. But I do think coaching matters. I think we've talked all off season about that, and I think Arthur Smith will have a game plan to combat that to the point where, again, they're not falling behind the sticks and they're able to mix things up. And so for me, I'd like it to be a multi-score game, but I do think it'll be a one-possession game, and it'll likely come down to Jalen Hurts potentially having the ball in his hands, maybe down 4 or 5, and he needs a touchdown, and he won't convert. So score-wise, I don't know, 27-23 maybe. Go with something like that. But I do think the Falcons start in the win column, and they'll need it because who they got on tap in week 2, which we'll talk about next week's show. I mean, it's Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you never want to fall in that 0-2 trap. Doesn't usually mean good things for your playoff ramifications. And if the Falcons are going to squeak in as a 5 to 6 to 7 seed, starting 1-0 is important, says history.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about getting back to respectability, like this is a game you got to win. If the Falcons get the doors blown off of them on Sunday, this is going to be a long season.
Yeah, certainly the talk.
They
The
don't
talk
get a lot
will
easier
be.
than this one.
Yeah, the talk will be. It won't be great. It'll be grim next week, and again, it's just week 1, but yeah, as Jake said, I mean, this is a very winnable game. This is a team that, the Eagles might not be good. It all comes down to, honestly, Jalen Hurts. I think will determine where they go. And if Jalen Hurts isn't the guy, then again, this is a team that'll likely be picking within the top 10 yet again. And again, if the Falcons are going to go anywhere, they got to beat teams like that. Anything else we want to talk about? I mean, the depth chart did come out. Anything notable you guys want to mention there? I mean, I tweeted out a few things, but I don't know if it's anything that we haven't already talked about. Ogundeji's potentially the fifth outside linebacker. So, I know we're all excited to see him play, and I think he'll be active on game days. It's always interesting, that first inactive list. I think he'll be active, especially because he did show he can cut it on special teams, chasing down return guys. So I think we'll see him, but I think they're going to ease him in. And guy like JTM and Copeland are right now listed, either or at outside linebacker 3, which would mean whoever loses out in that competition is the 4th guy. But I guess one thing to note there, I mean, Copeland is battling an injury, might not play this week. So if that's the case, then Ogundeji would see more playing time. But other than that, I mean, Williams and Darren Hall at cornerback 6, give the edge to Williams because of his special teams contributions. He's going to be the starting punt returner. It'll be interesting who Franks or Rosen. It doesn't look like they want to decide on quarterback 2, but those guys are right now split, and then Sharp and Blake as well at wide receiver 4. But yeah, I mean, Jalen Mayfield starting left guard. That's the biggest thing as far as where the depth chart stands, and hopefully, it's not as bad as we're fearing it might be with him. I mean, this is going to be a big test, and it'll go a long way for the future of this team if he can lock down that position. So yeah, that's our breakdown. We'll be back next week. Like I said earlier, we likely are going to switch to Wednesdays. Reason being, all 22, assuming it comes back on Game Pass, usually doesn't come out till Tuesday nights. So we want to have ample time to maybe review that and go over that. Maybe cover a play or two on the following week's episode. So we'll likely record Wednesday nights moving forward and have the episode out Thursdays. Anything else you guys want to add, want to plug on the website that you got coming up, Falcons wise, Braves wise, Hawks wise?
We have a new college football gambling show, if you want to call it a show. We do like a 20-minute live stream every week. So if you like college football picks, if you like talking college football, it's usually me, Alex Chase, and Chase's brother. So
is that on Spaces or the website, or how do you find that?
We might have to move it to Spaces. I don't know, but
are we going to do? What are our thoughts on doing Spaces? I know I'm going to be at the game Sunday. Going to do some pregame, postgame stuff on Spaces, depending on you guys interested in doing that.
Postgame, I don't really care. It's the 1:00 game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's do well, there's like a 30-minute, slot between the 1:00 games and the 4:30 games. So I'm down for either.
Okay. So yeah, certainly something, to give people more content and chance to maybe chat with us live as opposed to us recording these shows and then shouting them out. But appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll be back next week, hopefully to recap a Falcons win and preview a week 2 matchup with the defending champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So for Jake Gordon, Alex Lord, I'm Matt Karoly. This has been another edition of Talkin Birdy. Go Falcons.